in speaking with some of the spirit of indigenous cultures here, there was, I always had that, there's a whole concept of song lines and, the energy lines in the planet, and like they look at it as being sung and all this. And there was a meeting that I had at one point where I met with this spirit of this elder, and he said, "Oh, we're not, we weren't here, like we weren't the first people here. We actually sung this world into existence, and so we were the creators of this world, and our sole purpose was to sing the evolution of this world for eternity." And he said, when white man came, you took our voice away, and so the planet can't evolve. And so some of us, and many of us, are from that and reincarnating to sing the evolution of the planet back in again. And that really just resonated with me and made sense on some level. It's like, that's what we're doing, and that's why our voices are important. And it's like, each one of us, whether we're connected to that culture or not, it's the human consciousness has literally vibrationally sung this world into existence. Not just human, but also, all life on this planet. I think we vibrationally manifest before we
got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Hello and welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. So wonderful to be with you again. I have yet another beautiful, delicious expert sound healer to introduce you to today. He is in Australia. He's not an Aussie, but he does live here. His name is Matt Omo. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Oh, thanks, Karen.
I met Matt, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years ago now, during one of his sessions, which I'll talk about in a minute, what I experienced. But we're going to go through Matt's story as well. It's quite a transformative story. You know how much I like to present people with a transformative stories. And having known Matt for a few years, I actually had never heard his story until recently when he did his book launch. And you shared your story, because I've always wanted to put you on the show because I love what you do, and I love the effects of what you do, both on myself and what I see happening to others. And I thought, well, we could talk about sound. But when I heard your story, I thought, oh, great. That is such an amazing story. So we're going to
I should have told you sooner then.
Yeah, you should have told me sooner. But listen, let me just read your bio here. So Matt Omo is one of the leaders in sound healing movement here in Australia, with over 15 years experience working in a variety of sound healing techniques. He bridges cultures and traditions from around the world. Matt holds an MA in spiritual psychology, a diploma of sound healing. He's a Reiki master, certified Kundalini yoga teacher, trained as a breath worker with numerous certificates in other healing modalities. He's been a busy boy. He is also the co-founder of Be Still and Chill Health and Wellness, a thriving health centre here in Sydney, Australia, up in the Northern Beaches. With a diverse background in computers, massage and management, Matt has a vast knowledge of the workings of the wellness industry. He has brought together to create a platform for transformation change in communities around the world. The work and awareness of sound healing and its benefits is growing every day, and it sure is. I see it. It's growing every day. It's exponential. And Matt's developing a new programs and products to meet this need and continue to support people in discovering the benefits of the healing and transformative power of sound.
There you go.
There you go. So, where are you originally from?
Originally from the States. Like, grew up near Chicago, northern Indiana. So, yeah, been out here for 12 years now. So it's pretty much home. And,
What brought you here? I always ask everyone that I meet in Australia, and they usually say, "Oh, love relationship."
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, Australian girl brought me here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and once you get here, you can't get very far. You get kind of pulled in. It's not a bad place to be stuck.
No, it's a pretty amazing place. I was listening to an Aboriginal elder speaking at another book launch recently, and she said, the Aborigines say that this is where the teachers come to learn, the leaders come to learn.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, that's interesting because the work that I do, it was all pretty much developed here. Like a lot of the concepts and things I had embraced in the States, but it didn't really gel until I got here. And even the didgeridoo, playing the didge, I had purchased a didge in LA that was made here, and then tried to play it for like 3 years in LA, and it never worked for me. And it was months after being here, just all of a sudden could do it. And there's lots of stories around that, but I totally resonate with that statement.
Yeah, I had felt like Australia has some, people, that's why I ask people why they come, because they usually come because they're following some love relationship. But I think the land draws you here. I think the energy, the community, something draws people here that's not what they think it is. It's like people think, oh, I want to live in a pretty place or by the beach, or I'm going to fall in love with an Australia, whatever. But it's usually a different reason. It's usually to develop that and then take it back out into the world. Like, I'm here to develop that. I'm full of good tricks. Just fixing the microphone there. Okay, so I went to the book launch the other night, and it was amazing. Do you want to hold up your book?
Yeah, there it is.
Love your vibe. What does it say? Using the power of sound to take command.
Using the power of sound to take command of your life.
Yeah. So for somebody who is more someone who facilitates sound, it's unusual that you actually wrote a book. Why did you write a book?
Oh, look, one reason is because I've got so many processes and I just keep forgetting them. So I wanted to put it somewhere where I didn't forget.
Fair enough.
No, I've always had this in when I first started, like my whole vision is that we're all sound healers. Okay. And so we're all working with sound and vibration, and the larger definition of what sound and vibration is. Our Western minds have a very limited perception of sound and vibration as a form of entertainment. Yeah. And so if you get into the ancient cultures and what the mystics have been talking about for millennia, you start to hear that all of creation is actually vibration or sound. And so within that, then, if you start to really embrace that concept, then you are realizing that you are using sound and vibration in your life to create your life, and that we need to take I feel that humanity as a whole can take a more empowered stance of that, more responsibility of what they're putting out there through their vibrational transmission. And so, I was finding the workshops I led, people were coming in and expecting performances from me and expecting me to entertain them and, make them feel good, and then go back into their lives. And then they continue to create disharmony and bad vibrations in their lives instead of realizing that they are the source of that. And so I wanted to start to develop processes that actually taught people that awareness, taught people that wisdom, and how to then take command of their vibrational state, their frequency, which is what I call the vibrational signature, which consists of your breath, your body, your mind, and your emotions. If you take command of those 4 components, then you have command of your life. And so in the developing of how do I actually teach that, how do I actually share that with people in a way that's palatable for our Western mindset, this process developed. So this book is actually outlining the 7-session process that I developed through workshops over the last 8 years or so.
Fantastic. Well, let me tell you my experience of you. I think it was about 5 years ago now that I was with my flatmate. She wasn't feeling very well, and I saw that there was a sound healing on up the road at the local yoga center. So we cruised up there to experience your sound healing. And I remember you asked people to set an intention. And my intention was to bring my flatmate so that she would have some experience of it and some healing, right? That was my intention. So I didn't really have an intention for me.
Yeah.
And I remember I said, don't really have an intention. And I remember you saying, watch out.
Did I?
Yeah. It's like, you've got no intention. Well, then there's, like spirit will have some intention, like we'll have something going on and it probably won't be what you're expecting. And I remember thinking, that was an interesting comment. And
Oh, shit. Yeah.
no, it was absolutely true because
Yeah.
so you have us lie down on the floor that day with our heads in the center and our eyes shut. So you were in the center of us and we were in a circle.
Yeah.
And what I experienced was I felt like there were so many beings, like people in the room. Like I felt like there was a crowd facilitating this sound. Like it felt, when you're in a crowd of people, you can feel people around you. Like you can feel their presence. That's what I could feel.
Yeah.
I didn't specifically see them, although I can see a lot of things because I'm a very open third eye, but I felt them. And I had this really sharp pain just like surge through my gut. And I think I had some sort of gallbladder release, like a stone release or something happened. Like I asked my guides afterwards and they said, yeah, something like that. Don't worry about it. It's like you're not dying or anything. But basically I received the healing, I received the healing. So I bring my flatmate to get her and she thought it was amazing. But I received this healing and I didn't have intention. So they used that sound to sort of, I don't know, just release some blockage. Maybe it was a gallstone or something. Yeah. So I was kind of blown away at the end of it. I was like, oh my God, the power of sound, that just, and I walked up to you afterwards and I said, you work with the Hathors. And you go, oh, and I said, oh yeah. Do you want to talk about how it started for you and how you met these beings and, let's,
it's always a hard question for me to answer because it's like you look back and you see all these different merging lines that come together and it's like, oh yeah, that's why I did all those different things. So it's like to try and figure out how it started and where it came in is a difficult question to answer, but the best that I can kind of articulate in this kind of time span is I'd always had a fascination with sound. Something that I explored when I was in Los Angeles and in like a, wanted to be a musician kind of thing, but I never had formal training. So it was just like, just dabbled in it. And then through working with a kind of the spiritually focused acting teacher, I realized that creativity and spirituality kind of coincided. And that's when I started then to work with different creative processes. Like I dove into Julia Cameron's work, The Artist's Way, and she really talks. It was designed back in the '90s for. You familiar with that work?
Yeah.
And to help stuck artists get unstuck, basically, and it actually relates to all people, whatever industry they're in, whether they're artists or not. I think we're all.
But what I want from you is what you said during the book launch, that story about your mum and looking for, tell us that story, because I found that just such a beautiful story about what happened with your mum.
About my mom, yeah. Well, that was pre everything.
Yeah, exactly. That was the journey. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I was, she died when I was 22, 20, yeah, it would have been 22, I think, 23. And during like a few days after that, after she passed, I had a very vivid dream about her, where she basically took me to this space through, to spirit, I guess I would call it. I was very childlike and connecting to her in that kind of mother-daughter kind of dynamic. And she came swooping down. She's very angelic kind of figure. Like that's the wrong word, and etheric. Like she wasn't in form, but I knew that it was her. And so one of the things I tried to reach for her, and I couldn't. I could reach out to her, but when I tried to embrace her, she would pull away. And so there was a message in that for me that I discovered 20 years later. And there, in that she was showing me that I needed to hold myself, and that only came through like 2 years ago. But this whole dream then opened, and the chandelier in our dining room where I was having this vision, this dream, opened up to this, like, it almost looked like a movie screen. And I saw colors and shapes that were beyond the colors and shapes that we could see, and heard sounds that were beyond the sounds of our ear. And it was just this profound experience. And I thought, oh wow, what is this that you're showing me? And there was never an answer as to what it was. And upon waking, it was very vivid. I jumped up into my body and like was wide awake, and just, it was as if I had actually experienced it in real time,
Mm-hmm.
And over the years I discovered it was not a television screen, it was a mirror, and she was showing me a reflection of my true self. And so I was seeing the multidimensional colors and shapes and sounds that actually made up who I was. And so it was this beautiful unfolding. Basically, that was the introduction, I guess, to beyond the physical, and that all is vibration. And
So
over time,
you're about 22, and were you close with your mum?
yeah, very close to my mom.
And was she awake to any of this stuff?
Like, hey,
she was a nurse.
Yeah, a nurse and a healer. She was like, we were very, very similar. I find the more that I grow up, I realize how similar I am to her.
Yeah. And so she was a healer. And the 22-year-old Matt is probably doing what most 22-year-olds do. It's like, I don't know, get the girl, get the car, get the career, whatever.
Yeah, well, I was studying to be a computer engineer at that point.
Right.
So yeah, was doing what everybody was supposed to do: get the job, get the career.
And how did did she die of cancer?
No, it was it's still unknown, really. There was some sort of she was either shot or she killed herself, but it's really? Unknown. So there was no definitive answer, because it was typical things as like a suicide note or this or that was not part of it. And there's a lot of gray around that, so I've had to let that go over the years.
Was she unhappy?
Not noticeably, no. I think she was struggling on some levels. There was I believe that she, like, knowing myself more, I've dealt a lot with depression and realized a lot about myself with my biochemistry and how I actually function, and just my biochemistry and how I am. And I think I can kind of empathize where she may have been in herself,
right?
And see that she could have been on a bit of a downward spiral. And there's a lot that I didn't know. I was away at school, and she was, I don't know what was going on with her at that point in her life.
My mum died of cancer when I was 16, and look, when you see someone, I think that for you, your mum's there 1 minute and then gone the next, and she's not gone through the process of illness. So you've not contemplated her death, or it's like such a wake up call. It's such a bang. Whereas when you watch someone struggle with illness, by the end of it, you're like, please go. So you're like, you're asking them to go because you just can't stand watching them suffer anymore. But it's just such an activation into that connection with spirit, that when someone dies, they return to that place that you saw, that place. And the fact that your mother showed it to you when you were telling us at the book launch, I was there, you were describing it, and I went to that place, and I'm going, wow, you were sort of a little bit more descriptive about what you were experiencing. And you said that really your journey has been trying to find that place again ever since, like, what is that place? What
are those sounds? What are those colors? I used to sit in my engineering courses and just try and draw these multi-dimensional shapes that you can't draw. And I was like, how do you draw that? Twisted squares and DNAs and like helixes, and trying to recreate it. And it was actually only like I didn't explore the sound so much until later. And then I got to a point where, working with the gong especially, so through Kundalini yoga I was introduced to the gong, and I just really to me, the gong is a portal. It's
Oh, absolutely. I
you know,
forgot
you
to
hit
tell
that
people that
gong.
you're the Gong Guru. We call you the Gong Guru. Matt Omo, the Gong Guru. I forgot to tell people that.
Yeah,
The
that's it.
gong, the gong. This cat's driving me crazy. It's trying to drink my water and hassling me.
Oh no.
The gong is exponentially portal. Yeah, it's
That's it. And so when I started hitting that, I was like, oh, here's my way back to that. And then
right.
that's when, you talk about the Hathors and all these beings and feeling like you're being held in that room. It's like, well, yeah, I was freaking out. I was like, didn't know what was going on with me, because I would hit that and then I would see certain images, like mostly in my head, in my mind, but it's like you say, you feel that presence, but you visualize that presence next to you. I guess it's the best way to describe it. It's not like someone's actually literally standing there, but energetically you can feel there's someone standing there and you can see them in your mind. And it's like, oh, that's a bit unnerving. And then as I started to play, I was like, lights going on and off, printers starting when they're not supposed to. I was in a dark room with a hallway that was lit, and I would see like people walking past the door, and there's nobody in the building. I'm like, okay, this is really freaky. And I thought I was losing my mind. And
Yeah, like most people do when they enter that space. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
going
but it's
crazy.
still debatable, I guess. Whether
Yeah, you could be crazy.
we all are crazy, I reckon.
What does who was it? Somebody said. I think it was in the book's Conversation in God. In order to know God, you have to be out of your mind.
Yeah, that's it. Nice one. It's too true. Yeah. Yeah, so just exploring that, and it's been quite a journey. Yeah.
It's been a big journey. So let's hear more of the journey. So
Okay.
you heard you went to this place. Your mum came to you. Was it very long after she died? Like, was it months, weeks, days?
No, it was just days. Like, it was
Oh,
actually literally, we had it was like the day after we had the service, I think.
right.
Yeah, I was still, because I'd gone back home for the service and everything, so I was sleeping in my childhood bed, and it was this, yeah, kind of back home, and yeah.
And when you woke up in the morning, I guess the quest was, what is that place? And then you like spent the rest of your life trying to recreate it, trying to find it, trying to like that question, like, what is that? What was that?
Well, yeah, how do I get back to her, basically?
Mm-hmm.
I was, going through that whole grieving process at first. The first few years, it was just about everything was so wrong. I think at the book launch, I talked about it when my dad told me that she had been killed. It was like my hands just clenched. I can still remember when he told me, and that feeling, that clenching of those fists, and that locking of that anger, and that just went right up my arms into my heart, and it was just this shut down, just and just so then the journey began. It's like how to that being reefed away from that connection, that relationship, like probably the closest relationship we ever have is with our mothers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, losing that. And then it's like, well, on one level, I was like, okay, it's time to grow up. And then on the other level, it's like that child was wounded and looking for his mother. And it's like, so I kind of had to do that exploration, finding myself and finding the way to satiate. That's why I say when I reached out to her in that vision, she pulled away, and it was like that child in me wanted to hold her and be held by her, and she was saying, you've got to hold yourself. And it's always been that, and it was actually in the writing of the book that actually landed. I mean, you conceptually get stuff, but then it actually embody it is another story. And so
Absolutely.
22 years later, it actually, boom, I embodied that concept. So it's like, it took a while.
Do you feel it took a while? It does, takes a while. Do you feel closer to her, like the love that that's her, like that? Because really a parent or a lover is that feeling of that connection, and we have that, whether it's, we have that with our own source, I suppose.
Well, that's an interesting question. It's like she's been there the whole time.
Yeah.
When she opened that portal in that vision, I mean, that was the way that I was capable of receiving at that time in my life, was through my dream state. My conscious mind was too cluttered and restricted, you know?
Yep.
And now all I got to do is sit down in front of a crystal ball and I open up to those realms.
Right.
And you know, that's through practice and through time and through, you know, just developing I think our capacity is far larger than we give ourselves credit for, but she's always been there. And when you said that, when you asked me that question just now, it just was like, you know, when someone dies, that, or, you know, whether they're close to you or not, it's like I think we have to, the grieving process feels like it's letting go of one relationship and then creating a new relationship. And and so, you know, that took some time. And then in this new relationship is that I found her in the sounds. I found her in, you know, she's still the nurse, still the healer in that realm, and being a bridge for me to bring her healing or whatever, or it's all us really.
Yeah.
That source,
Healing,
you know,
yeah.
bringing
Healing
that through, you know. And so
absolutely, that's so beautifully said, Matt. You know, I was listening to Esther Hicks talk about, you know, she teaches the teachings of Abraham. You know, the Hicks teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome.
You know, Jerry dropped his body, and so this was interesting because she's like to me, this revered teacher who teaches the world about all this stuff, and then she's living it, you know, that conceptual stuff, and then living it, like she's having her like a experience of what, you know, Abraham talks about, because Abraham's always saying, you know, you've got to get over this death thing. There's no such thing as death. You know, she's repeatedly said that a million times, and then she has her death experience. But Jerry said through her, stop looking for me where I was and look for me where I am. And that's exactly what you said. Like, I'm not in the body. Stop looking for the body. I'm not there. And look for me where I am. So that's the grieving process, to stop looking for somebody in their physical form and look for them where they are. And then when you find them, the grief stops. And
I think like the level, like what happened at the book launch, it was kind of like, you know, there was a part of me that pursuing this career and doing this work was a carrying on her legacy, you know, and it was gonna get emotional. It was you know, a part of me was doing it for her, and like that was, I put a lot of weight into this book, you know. It's like, oh, this is something in form that can represent her life continuing, you know. And it was like, and then and all this was like unfortunately I guess at the book launch, all this is just landing for me in front of, you know, 100 people. Like,
let me tell you what happened. So we're in the geodesic dome, the Sound Life Dome, which is just this amazing space. And it's beautiful, and there's all these people there, and Matt's standing up, and he was going through, now I'm crying, he was going through this struggle of ego and service. So the ego says, look at me, I've got something to sell you, to show you, and you're going to give me whatever I'm asking for. Like, you're going to give me praise, applause, you're going to buy my book, you're going to come to my sessions, you're going to pay me, whatever. That's the ego says. What am I going to get from you? And then spirit says, what can I give to you? You know, what can I share with you? What can I share authentically? And there is this struggle going on with you on stage, which was because you kept talking, and actually when you were talking, you were really engaging, and then you'd stop and you'd like beat up on yourself and say, oh fuck, I sound like such a bloody dork. You're like, I don't want to sell you anything. I'm going into my sales pitch spiel. And so it was openly, the battle between the ego and the selfless giving was just raw and out there on stage for everyone to see. And I actually thought it was really beautiful, except for you kept beating up on yourself. And I thought, enough with the beating up on yourself, Matt. Yeah. Because we all have that struggle of what can I get to what can I give. We think that we need to get something from people, when in fact all we need to do is give. And in the giving, all is received. And so there's always that struggle within all of us. And seeing you openly do it in front of an audience was really quite enlightening, actually. And but also because you're someone that plays, you know, you facilitate sound. So being a speaker is a whole different journey and energy. To stand and be real and raw and authentic in front of a crowd of people is something that terrifies most people, right?
Yeah.
It's like, but what you do with the sound, which we can't really translate on a podcast show, we can send people to a link, is just exponentially multi-dimensional. Yeah, it's just amazing what you do, because you get into that zone, you bring in all those beings, and it's quite an amazing experience.
Yeah. It blows my mind. I just sometimes sit back and like my conscious mind is observing what's happening, and I'm like, oh,
Right.
that's just, what is that? It's so unreal.
Right. The Conscious Club put you on that. I think that was the biggest gig you'd done up until that point, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's about 400 there, I think, for that one.
And what did you experience when you were like facilitating sound for that? Is it different when you've got more people?
It is different. Yeah, it's I wasn't like it's funny because each step I take, I'm like, I don't know if this is gonna work. I don't know if I could do this. And then I do it. I'm like, oh yeah, that fucking worked. And
Yeah.
so it's I think I've done a couple groups that size since then, and just this year I did a group of about 900.
Wow.
And in that group, it kind of landed for me as a difference, and it was like you have there's a synergy that has to happen. So like when we start to work together in a group, whether it's 10 people or 1,000 people, everyone has to kind of come into sync, come into this I don't know, it's harmony basically. And it takes some time, and some groups will be ready and they'll just drop right in. Other groups, it's like takes a bit of cajoling to get everybody onto that page, but then once we all get there, then it's like this movement happens, and we start to release the bounds of our physical, mental, emotional states, and we start to reach into a more vast consciousness. And it's like that's what I was referring to with the gong being a portal. It's almost like the gong and the sounds and the layers allow us to relinquish that grasp that our 3D reality has upon us, and then move into that expanded consciousness where we have access to that oneness, that wholeness, and and that's what it's all about, really. And so in the larger groups, I find once that gets going, it's literally like you've just set a freight train down a steep hill.
Right.
And so with the smaller groups, sometimes people will come up against a place of resistance where there's a muting of that divine harmony that's wanting to flow through them, and it shows up in a tension in the body or an emotional release or a old memory or something, whatever, and they're off on their journey and kind of like losing that synergy. And so it's my job then to help bring them back into harmony with the rest of the group. And so with a small group, it's easy to then work with one or two people and keep that kind of, on the tracks. But then with a larger group, if it's not just one person that kind of goes off, it's like a couple dozen. And then you've got this whole freight train going down this hill that you're trying to keep on the tracks. And it's like, it's a very, it can be challenging, and it's quite beautiful when you start to dance with it. And it's like you just, it's going to move, but you got to kind of guide it. And it's so that's the biggest difference that I notice with working with a larger group, is that it's just get this momentum, and it's this, you really feel how powerful we are when we start to come together.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's just mind blowing. The capacity that we have. Only having experienced a few thousand. Like imagine what a few million on the planet together, same intention. I mean, this is what a lot of the work that we're seeing is happening now. Meditation and like the million meditator thing that was going on. It's like it's all happening, and people are similar consciousness moving forward together. It's beautiful.
A collective I was just seeing people kind of doing sound together at the same time all over the planet, because there's been the meditation that letting out that same sound and same intention all over the planet. I just had that vision. Thank you for that. That was a beautiful vision.
Yeah, no, I've seen that one too.
Have you? Hold the vision. Right. You've just given me that vision. But I think we're just not even scratching the surface on the power of sound as a collective, as a third dimensional paradigm. What I've experienced with it, I know it can go so much further, but it's kind of scary, like a portal. Like it's like you can literally. Years ago, I read the Seth books many moons ago, in my 20s, and there was something in it that always stayed with me, where Seth said that at some stage on this planet there was a group of beings that evolved, and they became very highly evolved, and they tried to evolve violence out of, and aggression out of their DNA, which they did, but they did it to the point where they couldn't even defend themselves against the weather, and they had to move underground, and they lived in inner earth, and they used sound for all their energy. They used it to get around. They used it to cook with. They used it to paint with, and that was just like sound was their energy source. And I read that like a million years ago, and it's never left me in one of the Seth books. And what I've experienced at that big gathering you did at Conscious Club was, after you finished, I felt literally like I was glued to the floor. It was because the healing I received from the little gathering was like a little release, but I felt like I received a bigger healing in a bigger gathering. Do you know what I mean? I received much more. And so I felt literally like I couldn't get up. Like I needed someone to get me up. It was kind of like I'd had an operation. I don't know. It was like something had happened, and I felt like, I don't think I can get up. But I knew that it was a good thing. Like when you've had a big healing, or if you've gone to hospital, like we used to read it, and you've had a big operation, then you need time to recover. And that's how I felt after that. So maybe the bigger the group, the more powerful it is. I don't know.
I don't know either. It feels strong.
So where do you think we can take sound? Like, what have you've gone there in your mind, like what you can do with it? Where do you think we can go?
I don't know. I like what you said about the Seth books. I hadn't heard that before. That was in there. Abraham talks about it too. There's somebody asked her about the pyramids,
right?
And she said basically that the Egyptian culture was using, like, we have harnessed light and electricity, and that the Egyptian culture had harnessed sound in the same way. And so they were utilizing sound, and they say sound is a much more powerful physical energy than light is. And so she says, once you guys, this civilization understands that power of sound and how to harness it as we have with the light and electricity, then there's going to be huge shifts on the planet. And
absolutely,
and it's already starting to show up in many in medical capacities, use of sound, ultrasound, focused ultrasound. They're mending bones, they're blowing up kidney stones, they're they're using the Western model, which I think is a bit restrictive, but it's, I guess, a step in the right direction, in that they're targeting, like, moving past the blood-brain barrier to deposit drugs directly to the area that needs them, utilizing sound to transmit it, to transport it there. So it's like there's fascinating things that are happening. And yes, we're getting a better understanding. And I just heard some science somewhere about there's actually a component of matter related to sound that they had not known before. And so a lot of the conversation is that a lot of the traditional physics around sound is actually starting to fall away. And there's new understanding coming forward as we, delve deeper into the quantum concepts. So it's, I think that there's an unlimited capacity. You've got Edgar Cayce had prophesized that the new forms of medicine were going to be all related to sound. You've got Nikola Tesla, and even Albert Einstein. There's a few quotes of them relating to the power of sound and vibration and it being everything. And like, you know, through their scientific exploration, they're getting back to what the ancients and mystics had talked about. So I think in sound is the essence of creation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's within every cell of our being. And I think somewhere in there is our ability to understand our capacity more fully. So how do you articulate that in form? I don't know.
Absolutely. You're spot on. You know, I've read or heard that the pyramids were built by the ETs, probably, you know, because I think that there was a time on this earth during that Egyptian period where humans and extraterrestrials walked together hand in hand on planet Earth. Mm-hmm. Something I'm looking forward to happening again, you know, like when, like, you know, that bar scene in Star Wars where we're all just hanging out, you know.
The canteen, huh?
Yeah. But that they obviously were so much more intellectually or evolved than we were, and they used sound to build the pyramids. They, you know, we try to, as 3D humans, try to conceptualize how did they put these big boulders together when they didn't have the machinery that, you know, modern man has, but they had sound, and they used it to transport these big, put them in place with the power of sound. So tell us about your relationship with the Hathors.
Well, I don't know what to tell about it. See, when I do the work, the Hathors came in because I don't know what these things are. I didn't know how to define it. You know, like I would see like a Native American at first, or another one was like this little dude that looked like Gollum, you know, from Lord of the Rings, and he would kind of scurry around on the walls and up the ceiling and stuff, and like that was really freaked me out. But I was making all these sounds and stuff, and you've heard what I do, and I think we can share something with your community as well, so they get a taste of it. But the sound. One of my clients came in, Justine. You remember Justine, yeah? Yeah. And you know, she had encouraged me to actually do the work. And then as I was going, she's like, you know what these sounds sound like? It sounds like you're working. You're doing very similar stuff to what Tom Kenyon is doing.
Yeah.
And I was like, who the hell's Tom Kenyon?
Yeah.
And then that's when I was introduced to his work, and it was like boom, 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 boom. And a month later, I'm in the States working with Tom Kenyon, and was introduced to what he calls the Hathors, which is, you know, funny. We're talking about Egypt as well, because they apparently were working with the Egyptians back in the day.
They were one of the ETs that were like walking the earth with humans back then.
That's right. And so, Tom is a sound healer in the States, who works with them exclusively and brings their frequencies through. And so being introduced to his work, I started then to identify with that construct, and then started to consciously connect to that kind of vibration as well. And they come through at times, as well as, you know, you said you felt the whole tribe around. There's many different beings and cultures that I feel are just like right on the other side of this veil. And like, as you start to work with sound, it's like they're queuing up almost. It opens, and it's like they're queuing up. They're like, it's about freaking time you guys learn to work with sound again, because we're here waiting in vibration, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, so
I have to tell you what happened. I want to chat about Justine too, because he shared that also because that was beautiful, and she was such a beauty, and we need to honor her. But yesterday we were on retreat. You know, I got back from retreat last night, and just before we left, we were just in a little circle. I don't know, about half a dozen of us, just omming, just toning, just omming. I can't remember, just sounding to say goodbye. And sometimes they just reach this point where this vibration is so pure. Anyway, this little Aboriginal dude stuck his head through the veil, like used that sound to like just pierce through the veil, and he stuck his head right in my face. He was all painted up. He was all painted up like in corroboree dress. Like it was just like his head. But I had seen them out in the bush. I had seen 5 in my third eye, and asked them who they were, and they said, we're the custodians, and they were just witnessing. They were just watching us. They were just watching us. Somebody asked me, were they benevolent, malevolent? And I said, no, neither good nor bad, just witnessing, just watching, just like we would watch animals in a zoo. It's kind of terrible to say that, but we love the animals, and we like to watch what they do. And then this guy came in through this sound. And he said, you only saw 5 of us, but there are thousands of us here. And he just showed me, just opened this, he said, have a look. And there was just all these indigenous in spirit everywhere. And I just went, okay, well, what do you want of us? And they said, we want you to dance. Dance the land. And but they came in on that sound. So you can use sound to open your third eye, to pierce the veil, to communicate with spirit. For people that, so many people ask me, how do I communicate with my spirit guides? You can use sound to do that. To take you through that portal from the mind to the connection with spirit.
It's limitless, really.
Yep.
In speaking with some of the spirit of indigenous cultures here, there was, I've always had that, there's a whole concept of song lines and the energy lines in the planet, and like they look at it as being sung and all this. And there was a meeting that I had at one point where I met with this spirit of this elder, and he said, oh, we're not, we weren't here, like we weren't the first people here. We actually sung this world into existence. And so we were the creators of this world, and our sole purpose was to sing the evolution of this world for eternity. And he said, when white man came, you took our voice away. And so the planet can't evolve. And so some of us, and many of us, are from that and reincarnating to sing the evolution of the planet back in again. And that really just resonated with me and made sense on some level. It's like, that's what we're doing, and that's why our voices are important. And it's like, each one of us, whether we're connected to that culture or not, it's the human consciousness has literally vibrationally sung this world into existence. Not just human, but also, all life on this planet. I think we vibrationally manifest before we physically manifest. And so there's a restriction of that evolution, the natural progression of this world, because of the muting of our voice that is now being reclaimed, I think. And that's why a lot of these indigenous cultures are being honored and more respected now and understood, is because they had that full expression of voice and connection to the natural evolution of things in harmony. And we've gone so far out of that harmony that we are now reclaiming what we once knew. So
that's powerful, Matt. I'm just having all these visions. That's so powerful. Like what white man has done with singing, so many songs. Because I don't know, maybe when you turn sound into song, it amplifies the intention of what you're singing about, what you're thinking about. It's a bit like movement. When you think and then move, you generate more energy to the thought, and then the thought becomes a bigger manifestation in the world. So it's the same with sound.
Sound to me is the bridge to bring consciousness into form.
Right.
So you have awareness, you've got to have an understanding of, like, basically awareness is where you're at. So you've got to, I'm here, I'm aware of what's going on. And then you have an intentional component. So awareness plus intention give you the foundation. And so it's where you are and where you want to go. And then you add the sound in, or vibration. So those three, awareness, intention, and sound, create the formula for then healing, or a larger construct of transformation or evolution. And it's like, I think that is because you can have awareness and intention outside of form, right? And in order to bring it in, and this is, where cymatics kind of fits into the equation. Cymatics is that the different frequencies create different geometrical patterns on a plate. Like initially it was a violin string or a violin bow across the metal plate, and then these salt on this metal plate would create these, geometric figures. And over time, they've started to develop it, and they've got more three-dimensional patterns and using more like, frequency generators, not just a vibration of a bow on the plate. And so the story, to really be able to see how the actual different vibrations and combinations of vibrations are actually creating structure and form. And I think those are the basic building blocks. And we're just kind of, like you say, dipping our toe into a lot of this and not really understanding it fully. That if you take it to a larger scale, our bodies are holding a symphony of vibrations that create the actual form that we are, as well as everything around us. And I think that we actually have the capacity to understand that. And then it's a scary thing on one level, is that if we could actually use sound to actually create form from a conscious standpoint.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I had a New Zealand woman on the show who has blown my mind. I can't stop thinking about her. So she wrote a book called The Dual Soul Connection. It's about her being an ET and a human soul. And so she's taken up on the ships all the time, and she hangs out with her tribe up there, and they teach her all this stuff. And one of the experiences she had up on the ship was that she was in this room with some humans, some human hybrids and some ETs, and they were trying to explain to the humans how they have that dominion over manifestation of form. So they know how to dematerialize the structure of their bodies and then rematerialize it into any form, anything. So that's what they showed them. They showed them how to dematerialize, and they were trying to get the humans to do it. And she said the humans couldn't grasp, even though they were a dual soul. So they were ET soul, and but they were in human form. So they human mind, human form. So they were still working with the human form, and I suspect that she didn't really have the whole nuts and bolts of it, but they were probably using that sound to do exactly what you're talking about. Like, they just have mastery over manifestation.
The kind of science behind it.
Yeah, which, you hear stories of people getting abducted and they say they walked through the walls. And so to the linear mind, it's like, oh, you're crazy. But when you reach that level of mastery, you understand that everything is just vibration. It's all just energy and information and vibration. And when you understand how to work with that vibration, you can walk through walls or dematerialize and rematerialize. Like, you can beam me up Scotty, I guess, and go and travel through time and space and physically, and plop your body somewhere else on another part. I mean, I'm looking forward to this. I'm sure I live in a future life where this happens, because I can't wait for it to happen here and now. So when are we going to beam me up Scotty and I don't have to get in the car?
Oh, I know. I'm tired of hauling my gong up and down the coast here. With my teleporter. Yeah.
Can't you use the gong to just teleport you?
Well, yeah, I've been working on that. Yeah. So
give us some experiences that you've had with sound yourself. Like, have you had any sort of physical transformational teleportation, sort of weird things happen to you?
Yeah. All kinds of weird things.
You didn't think the conversation was going to go there today, did you? But you're talking to me, honey.
Yeah. Going well down the rabbit hole, aren't we?
You bet.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like different ailments have come right. I tone every day. Like, I do a process that I call flow into form, and I can adjust that to like a 5-minute process, or as long as I want. I usually do about 20 minutes, but it's it's using sound to balance my body, mind, and emotions, and connect it to source and ground it in. So through that process, I'm always finding how sound actually impacts my physicality, releasing tension in my body, aiding in digestive issues, or healing sprains or bruises, or that kind of stuff. And it's just a practice of that. Working with the groups, we've already talked about kind of the wild and wacky shit about the different beings and entities coming through. That happens all the time. People that have died are always coming through,
right.
And working with them, and yeah, sometimes really, really tangible. I'll see one girl had come through, and I saw this guy standing next to her, and he was just really persistent that I mention it to her, because I usually don't mention these things to people because it's just, yeah, I don't want to be that guy.
Well, you are today.
Right. But it turned out it was her brother who had died a few months ago, and he just
Right.
wanted to, and yeah, just mentioning that and then saying the statement that he wanted to share with her was just brought her down to a huge release, and it was yeah, it was beautiful. So yeah, it just lots going on. I think you know I can't even begin to explain all the different things that have happened.
Well, tell us about your relationship with Justine, because I'd like to honor Justine in this conversation. She's such a beautiful being. So if people might remember, because we have a lot of American listeners and viewers,
Oh yeah.
and you know, Justine was that Australian teacher, consciousness teacher, healer, that moved to the States. She was going to marry her beloved, and then was tragically killed in an incident where police had turned up to a 911 call because there'd been some ruckus in a laneway or something. She had called them, and then the police shot her accidentally and murdered her. And so there was this huge, it was all over the news everywhere, all over the world. So she sort of tragically and suddenly left the planet through. Now, this is something interesting that I'm just putting two and two together. Through a gunshot, and so did your mum.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, interesting is a good word for it. Yeah, it was challenging. Justine was she's the first person that I opened up to with the gong.
Right.
And said, I asked her, I said, what is this? You know, I feel like I'm going crazy. And she always would talk. She was always very open about how she experienced spirit and her guides and her energies and this and that. And I always thought she was just a bit off the planet. But
yeah, I get that a lot.
so, but it was good for me. Like, she supported it and she made me feel more comfortable exploring that. I mean, coming from a computer engineering degree in Middle America, it's like that's a long way from home.
Yeah.
So yeah, and she introduced me to, or she sat through a session, and then I said, just listen, just tell me what you think. And I banged the gong, shook a rattle, made some weird sounds, and then she came out and she was all emotional. And by the time she could gather herself, she said, "Well, they say,
Yeah,
that you need to do this. You need to share this with the world." So that began the journey. And yeah, so I was really close with her. And so then when she was shot, it was like hard on many. Well, I mean, I heard about it because freaking CNN or New York Times or something was calling me and saying, "Oh, we're sorry for your loss." And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then you flip on your computer and it's all over all the news feeds, and it's like, wow, that's pretty horrible. And then the fact she was shot, and like my mom was shot, and it just resurfaced a lot of the stuff from that. And I was like, oh, the parallels were just like fucking horrible. And yeah, maybe I should be doing something about gun laws, like you know, I don't know, grab a gong, not a gun. But
there's a slogan. There's a slogan. Now that's a good one. To grab a gong, not a gun.
But yeah, no, it's just really weird to me that I have two people close to me, and in some regard, we're like, they've moved me along my path, because when my mom died, it was like that initial wake up and like, oh, this is happening, and then the discovery of it all. And then when Justine died, it was like, you know, I had felt like I'd been working with my mom from that side, but my mom had never experienced it here. And then when Justine died, Justine was like well and truly enmeshed in the work. And actually, 24 hours before she died, we had a synchronistic thing happen. She's living in the States, as you said, and like I was working on a new logo, and it just so happened through all these different things that the logo actually came out, and it was very similar to her logo, which I had forgotten. And when I realized that I had recreated her logo with my twist on it, I was like, shit, we got similar logos. And I thought, oh, that means we need to be working together again. And so I texted her straight away, and she happened to be online, and just went boom, boom, boom. And like talking about how our logos could be similar. And she had this silhouette of this woman's face with the head being this dandelion seed of life, and the dandelion seeds going out, like the brain expanding, opening. And then mine was going to be a male figure, opposite direction, with the seed of life and musical notes coming out, and so they would match. And she's like, oh, I'm so honored to be a part of your work, and that we get to work together again. And it was this really cool moment that we kind of, because she had gone off to do her thing in the States, and I was here, and then it just like we were coming back together. And that's 24 hours before she was shot. Right. And I was like, whoa, what was the point to all that? And then it was then realizing, oh, she had experienced it here, and now I get to work with her as well. Exactly. She gets to work through me, having a different reference point than my mom did, and that maybe in some way this was allowing this work to go further. Absolutely. Having somebody who physically was a part of it and now moved into spirit, it, I think, creates a stronger bond and capacity for me to actually connect. It's still bullshit that she had to die, but
well, she didn't die. She just dropped a body. Dropped a body, yeah. I walk between worlds, so I don't. People were quizzing me about this on the weekend, so I don't see here and there. I just see. Yeah. Because I can shut my eyes and I'm there. So, one of my best friends was born thalidomide, and she died at 40. And she came to me in a dream. She had a brain operation. She had a tumor, and I saw her in a dream, and I said to her, I'm holding her and shaking her, going, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you sure you're okay? Thinking, she's in a coma or whatever, or she just had the operation. And she says to me, of course I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. So I ring her sister the next morning and say, she's going to be fine. I saw her in a dream last night. And she died that night. And then I see her again in spirit. And I said, you lied to me. You told me you're okay. She said, I am okay. I'm just not in my body.
Yeah, that's it.
And she was kind of messing with me, that's kind of our relationship. But we forget that the body is just one experience. It's like the shirt we're wearing. We can take it off and put on another shirt, like have another experience. And so if someone drops their body, it doesn't mean they have to drop us. So
that's exactly right.
When you were talking with Christine, like we're working together. I mean, Justine.
Yeah.
You are working together. You just,
yeah, of course. Yeah, she's very present. And even just I was on retreat this last weekend, and she had, when she worked with the work in physical, there was certain things that she would relate to. She related to this golden woman with this gold ribbon that kind of flowed, and that when I was doing the sounds, she would chime in and do her sounds, and like almost go into like this full orgasmic release kind of thing. And she says, I said, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, there's this gold woman with this gold ribbon, and she just dances around and swings the ribbon around the room and heals people, and I'm just singing with her. And I was like, okay, cool. And this came through at this retreat Sunday, and it's like I just saw this gold woman and this ribbon, and then Justine was there just laughing her head off, and just she literally like sung through me, and it was as if she was singing me. And I was like, this is so rad. And
you're making me cry.
So I know she's there. It's that thing, we're multidimensional and three-dimensional, and where there's human side and spiritual, and it's like the spiritual side still longs for that physical touch and that connection, and but yet we know when we relate to the spiritual that we're already connected, and when that relationship's still there, so there's no death in that regard. Absolutely. So
oh, darling, I've just looked at the clock, 11:11. Look at that.
I know.
I was thinking, we've got to wrap it up now. So is there anything, I'd love people to experience your work. How are we going to do that?
Yeah, well, I'm really excited because I've started recording stuff now, and which gives me the ability to multi-layer things. And I've got a beautiful 20-minute process that takes people on a nice journey. So I can share that with everybody. just give you a link for that.
Great. Okay, I'll put that link on my webpage. I
Yeah.
probably won't put it on the YouTube or iTunes, so you'll have to go to my webpage, and then you'll see Matt's book there, and you'll see both the podcasts in like audio only and YouTube, and anyway, all the information will be on the webpage, and I'll share the link under all the platforms, and you can find the link to Matt's website and the 20-minute sound journey. And are you traveling anywhere? Are you going anywhere? So where are your next sessions? What's the plan, man?
Yeah, man. It's growing very quickly. I'm leaning more into retreats now and more ongoing work, which is beautiful. I'll be up on the Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast in the next week or two. And then got a few retreats here in May and August. And I actually, it's interesting you said you got people in the States because on your group, because I just sent a post out before we started this. We're organizing to get into the States and take the work back home for next year. So yeah, lots on the horizon.
So watch this space. If you want to meet Matt and experience the work in 3D, physically, check out his website. And as I say, I'll have the link on my webpage.
Cool.
And you've got your events and where you're going. Because as this Aboriginal elder said at this other book launch I went to, it was Nicole Gruel's book launch, The Power of Notes. She had an Aboriginal speak. She said, this is where the teachers come to learn, and then they take their work back out into the world. That's what she said. And I thought, cool.
That's great. Yeah.
So it looks like you might have some travel in your future.
Yeah, I'm ready.
With the work. Any last pearls of wisdom you'd like to leave with people?
I think we've hit a lot of it. In a nutshell, I think just just honor your voice. Like you and voice is not just the expression coming out of your vocal cords; it's the intentionality behind it. And so that then is your mind and your heart that are infused in the expression that's wanting to come forward, and that is actually needed. Like the world needs your voice, and each one of us uniquely can only be us, and it has to be expressed fully for the world to be fully expressed. So do that.
The world needs your voice. It has to be expressed fully for the world to be fully expressed. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thanks, Karen. See you soon.
A beautiful conversation with Matt Omo, the Gong Guru. Yes. It's hard to. I said to him, can we do some sound during the interview? And he said, Zoom really compresses the sound. He's a bit of a perfectionist. So the sound really doesn't translate when you're listening to it through a Zoom interview or a Zoom call, which is what we're doing now. So we didn't do any sound for you today. So I will put that link on my website if you want to go and experience that 20-minute sound activation that he's prepared for you with better audio, not coming through the little mic that we're using to have this conversation. So interesting what he said about sound. My mum was really insistent people call me Karen and not Karen. So many people still call me Karen. But there's quite a different resonance in the sound of a name. And there's many names like that. There's Elise and Alice and, Simone and Simon. And there's different qualities of sound, and it actually affects manifestation. So it's interesting, isn't it? That even people's accents and the way we talk, the way we speak, it's all sound. But what we can perceive through our ears is so limited to the sound spectrum. And so there could be silent sound and yet it's still affecting us. There could be vibration happening that is sound, but we can't hear it. So we don't call it sound, but it's still affecting us. And it's happening all the time around us, but we can't perceive it through these limited physical senses. Yeah, it's fascinating. I can't wait for sound to do the beam me up, Scotty thing. I'm really looking forward to that. Just being able to teleport anywhere in the world. You don't have to get in a plane and create all that pollution. And yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen in my lifetime, but I look forward to it at some point, maybe in the next life. Beam me up, Scotty. Thanks again for watching the show and for being a part of Accentuate the Positive and my conversations with gorgeous light weavers, new world teachers. And remember, if you have an interesting story that you'd like to share, just pop me a line and let me know. We can share it either on the show or in the book series, Awakening Soul series, sharing people's stories of awakening. Matt said after the show, he didn't know that I was going to go there with this conversation, because most of the people that interview him say, oh, don't get too woo-woo. And I'm the opposite, like, could you be more woo-woo, please? The world needs your woo-woo, I said to him. And he was kind of shocked that I wanted to talk about Hathors and spirit and talking to dead people. He was like, oh, I didn't know this is where we were going to go. He was going to get into the neuroscience of sound and all that sort of technical stuff, which we could have gone there as well. He's a wealth of information. So, remember to check out his work on his website. I'll have the website underneath the YouTube and on my page. And remember to buy the book Awakened by Death, Stories of Transformation Through the Death Experience, which is actually, his story really was a part of that. He had this awakening through the death of his mum and then through the death of Justine, one of his best friends. This activation, this acceleration of awareness through the death experience. So it was interesting that it sort of fitted in with that awakening experience that we've written about in Awakened by Death. And who's coming up in the Inner Sanctum? I have got Rich Martini coming up this month, who talks about hacking the afterlife. I love Rich because he's so, like irreverent with the whole death thing. He's like me. He doesn't talk about, oh, death, it's terrible. He's like hacking the afterlife. And he interviews, a bit like Elisa Medhus does, he uses psychics and mediums to interview people on the other side. How did you like your physical life experience, and what did you learn, and what's it like over there, and what are you doing now? And he interviews dead people. I love it. Hacking the afterlife. And he's a hoot. He's an absolute hoot. So if you want to join us, please do, and join the Inner Sanctum. It's not expensive at all. And you get to meet me and some of my guests on the show, and we also get together with me and we talk about being a deliberate creator, how you can be more deliberate in flowing your energy so that you can be the master manifester of your life and of the new world. Thanks again for watching. Love you all. Bye for now.